was a monster. And how it was.
Hey now, what is up everybody? My name is Mike Brown, aka ReviewKingMB, and I am here because I felt like making a video of my top 10 favorite horror movies of all time. Number 10 is The Thing. The Thing from 1984, John Carpenter's The Thing. This movie, I was going back and forth on whether or not I wanted to put Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho or this movie. And the reason why I decided to pick The Thing was because every time I watch this movie, for as old as it is, over 30 years, it's a movie that, if you think about it, like, it should be dated, it should be a film that I can't connect to anymore, but it still freaks me out. It still grosses me out. Just the plot itself, all of these guys seemingly stranded out in the middle of this Alaska just storm, and they're dealing with that. But then you get this alien creature that can shapeshift into anyone, that can connect itself onto you and pretend to be you without almost you knowing it. And so that creates everybody in the group not trusting each other. And just that plot alone freaks me out. That plot alone is scary. But then the scenes, the special effects where the dog first opens up into the shed of the other dogs and they're freaking out, and just the creature that comes out of it, or when the guy's stomach eats the arms of one of the guys and his head comes off and he's crawling around. It gives me the heebie-jeebies. Number 9, Child's Play. Child's Play came out in 1988. It came out the year I was born. So I remember watching this as a kid and being insanely scared by this doll. It might sound silly now if this movie was released now and never came out before. It would sound dumb. But it works. It works because you have Charles Lee Ray, Brad Dourif, the beginning where he's being gunned down and puts his soul into the doll, and then you have this mother. This is what I love about the movie the most. You don't get a lot of horror movies that is about a mother looking out for her son, wanting to do something good for her son on his birthday, wanting to come through for him. He desperately wants this good guy doll. She goes to like some back alley and buys it for cheap from some scummy guy, and that's where you realize, shit, the batteries aren't in this doll. Shit, the doll is making my son look crazy, and so they take him away from me. The end of the movie where he's burnt to a crisp, but he's still coming after poor Andy, this little kid. I don't know how he didn't grow up to become crazy or a serial killer himself. Chris Sarandon as the cop. There's so many great things about this movie. Number 8. This might sound weird for some people, but I Know What You Did Last Summer. This is one of those movies, like, really? This is on your list over, like, Psycho or some other great horror films? I know, this isn't going to make sense to a lot of people, but for me, being a 90s kid, growing up in the 90s, certain movies from that time I just watched over and over again. I had on VHS, and this was one of them, because this is one of those horror movies, if you watch now, it's not that bloody, it's not that gory, it's not too over the top in the killing, so it was good enough for me to watch, right? And then Jennifer Love Hewitt was probably my first celebrity crush that I can remember. So there's that. But also, when I rewatch it, I love the other cast. Freddie Prinze Jr., Ryan Phillippe. I think they're great. Sarah Michelle Gellar, who has probably one of the best chase scenes in any horror movie. One of those chase scenes to where you actually think she could make it out. You actually think she'll survive from this fisherman. I know, like, a fisherman is the killer. How many different occupations can a serial killer have for a disguise? It just, for some reason, it works. It's a creepy look, the mask and the hook and the inventive ways that he uses to kill people. I like this fisherman. Number 7, Cabin Fever. Cabin Fever, I almost couldn't believe that I didn't put this on this list originally, because Eli Roth, when he first started out, I loved his movies. I loved his writing. I loved how he looked at these young characters and how, yeah, they might come off as a little dumb or a little naive, or they might say stupid, ignorant things, but that's how teenagers are. It is. That's how I was back then. Hell, when my friends and I went out to a cabin in the woods, you do dumb shit. So watching these characters do that, you instantly relate to them. You instantly go like, yeah, I understand. These people just wanting to let loose, wanting to have fun. Sean from Boy Meets World, the scene where he's fingering the girl that he loves, right? And the flesh-eating disease. Like, this is another plot that it's not a guy in a mask. It's not a killer. It's not ghosts. It's just something that you can't control. Something out there that if you catch it, you're gonna die. There's no cure. And the whole aspect of not being able to trust anyone in the town, a bunch of rednecks, and they're all not trusting you. And I loved it. The kid who jumps up and yells pancakes and does karate. Like, the end of this movie goes so batshit crazy. The cop who just is all about the party man and hanging out with young girls, drinking and stuff. Like, I can't make sense of why I enjoy this movie as much as I do. I just do. I can't tell you how many people I've shown this movie to, and they've watched it like, really? You like this? Number 6, Jaws. Like, you can't have a top whatever horror movie list without Jaws, because not only you could argue that it's the first summer blockbuster movie, right? That's what people label it as, and I get it. It's directed by Steven Spielberg. Maybe some people don't think horror first, and it's like PG. Because there wasn't a PG-13 yet, but it's not rated R. Somehow they got away with not making this rated R, even though you do see a good amount of blood. You do see people die, at least get dragged underwater. The technique of not showing the shark really hardly at all, because of the malfunction of the animatronics, so they just had to make do. It makes the movie better because it's more suspenseful, it's more eerie, it's more the mystery of not knowing just how big this shark was. Because when you finally do see the shark at the end, and we're gonna need a bigger boat. Hell yeah, you are. This thing is huge, it's ginormous, and it's scary as hell. And the death scene at the end there, how bloody it is. How does that not make this rated R? But Spielberg, he has some connections. He pulled it off, and this movie still holds up. When I watched it recently, I just was astounded by how much this holds up. How not bored I was. I was still like, wow, this is great. Number 5, Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives. If I had to pick one Friday the 13th movie to put on this list, this is the one. Because I'm pretty sure this is like the first Friday the 13th movie I ever saw. So there's that. But also, it's number 6. They knew what they were doing. They knew that they had to change gears, stop being so serious, and stop going in a weird direction with the story. Let's make this fun. Let's have some fun with this. Tommy Jarvis just being a guy who is trying to warn everybody that Jason's alive, even though he indirectly causes Jason's resurrection with the lightning bolt, and it's so silly, but he's alive, and he rips his hand through somebody's chest and rips their heart out, like some of the best death scenes in the Jason series. And the part where all the kids are at the camp and the counselors are of course doing things they shouldn't be doing, getting killed by Jason, and Jason's so big and creepy. I love it. Number 4, Saw. I rewatched this recently, and it's one of those things where people remember Saw for what the sequels became. Gory, bloody, gross, and all this stuff. Convoluted story, sure, maybe at sometimes, but the first movie is just, the first 20 minutes or so is just Gordon and Adam in a bathroom, chained up, talking, getting to know each other, trying to figure out how they got here, trying to figure out who Jigsaw is, telling stories of what they've heard about Jigsaw, other people in traps. The Amanda bear trap scene is still one of the most memorable things about it. Gordon, by the end of the movie, he's freaking out, his wife and daughter, he cuts his own foot off. I love this movie. The ending, the twist of Jigsaw waking up in the middle of the bathroom, and holy fuck, great stuff. Number 3, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the remake. I could put the original because that movie did fuck me up the first time I watched it. It drove me mad and insane from all the screaming and whatnot. But the remake I saw first. The remake still gets me on a level where, look, I know it's only parts of the Ed Gein story that they took and made into a whole new thing and really built it up to look like it's a true story. That's fine. It's still the idea of that this could be true or that some of this could have happened. That's enough for me to think with my own thoughts and say, holy shit, I'm never going to Texas. I never want to do this. The whole sheriff, the crooked sheriff, doing whatever the fuck he wants to do, and you can't trust the cops, you can't trust anybody in the town. That always creeps me out. Jessica Biel I thought was great. All the characters around her were great. But Leatherface is his scariest that I've ever seen him, I think, in this movie, because he's big, he's hulking, he's cutting people's faces off and wearing them, but he gets some sick enjoyment out of it. The scenes where he's chasing Jessica Biel with the chainsaw through the woods and how that's shot, I love it. Number 2, A Nightmare on Elm Street, the original. Wes Craven, what more can I say about Wes Craven and the fucked up mind he had to have had to come up with a character like Freddy Krueger. Robin Englund, who played Freddy Krueger, and the charisma. I know he gets even more sort of silly and goofy in the sequels, but the first movie was perfect. That perfect combination of silly but seriousness and darkness and evilness, and he actually is enjoying messing with these kids before he kills them. The Tina scene of her being dragged along the ceiling and gutted, just iconic the way they shot that. Or Johnny Depp being sunk into his bed and the blood coming up into the ceiling. I still love watching that scene and how they pulled that off. A character like Nancy stepping into the mainstream of the movie, becoming the lead hero, growing to that brave state and wanting to prove to her father that this guy exists, her drunk mother, just all of this stuff. Great. But my number 1 favorite horror movie of all time, some of you, if you've watched my channel, you already know this by now. It's Scream. Scream is my favorite horror movie of all time, and some people might think, Scream? Really? That movie's not really scary. That movie's not really... First of all, it is scary. There are moments in that first Scream movie where it is fucked up, where it is dark and scary. Drew Barrymore's death scene, just her dying, getting stabbed and hung from a tree, her family or her parents finding her, that's fucked up. But just even the build up to it, the conversation that the killer has with her, his voice is creepy in and of itself, but then just the questions he's asking her, and it's flirty at first, but then he wants to get to know her. He wants to get to know how well her movie trivia is, and that's just, you hear that and you're like, wow, okay, here's a guy who's watched way too many horror movies. And then you jump to Sydney, who I think is a great lead female character. Neve Campbell, this sort of broke her out. Courtney Cox was really able to change her persona from Friends to something more of a bitch character. David Arquette as Doohy, I always love. He's one of my favorite. But Randy is my favorite character because I'm Randy. If I was in a situation like this, I would be Randy. I'd be quoting movies. I'd be quoting movie scenarios and like, this is how you survive a horror movie. I love those scenes where he's going through Halloween with the group and telling them the do's and don'ts and the rules, and you don't have sex, you don't do this, and you don't do that. And when you get to the killers, Billy and Stu, I know I just spoiled it, but if you don't know, you should have known by now. Billy and Stu going off and just their psychotic reasons for why they're doing it. It's almost no reason, but then there is a fucked up reason, and I love those chain of events. I love that whole movie. I can watch that just over and over again, never get sick of it. So guys, that's my list. That's my top 10 favorite horror movies of all time. Let me know, what do you think of my list? What's some of your favorite top 10 horror movies? Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. Later!
Please won't you save my desire?